This is the third story in the series, called The Traveller. It was early in the morning and not quite light yet, when Pippa heard a strange noise coming from the small valley just behind the family home. At first, Pippa just snuggled back down in her bed and didn't want to know. But then she heard it again. It sounded like an animal that was hurt, but it was a strange sound. She didn't know the sound that it made. Pippa hadn't heard an animal make a sound like it before, and was a little bit scared as to what sort of animal could be making that sound. It sounded a bit like whales that were on TV to Pippa, but that was impossible, as Pippa's house was hundreds of miles from the sea. Pippa got up the courage to look outside, but the fog was so thick that Pippa couldn't see anything, not even the hills behind the house, as they were all covered in a thick cloud. Pippa, in her pyjamas, just looked out from the open door of her home. Pippa, now becoming very curious about what was out there, and Mum and Dad were still in bed, fast asleep, should she venture down to the valley, she thought. Just at that moment, she heard what seemed to be another cry from the valley. It was more than she could bear, so she went back to her room and got dressed, grabbed her coat and bounded out the door and headed towards the strange sound that was coming from the valley. It was very foggy, and Pippa could hardly see where she was going. And then she saw it, a large bluish thing in the bottom of the valley. It seemed to float and look a bit like a very large tadpole, and it seemed transparent, but Pippa couldn't see through it. As Pippa walked around the thing in amazement, she plucked up the courage to touch it. Now, it was very brave for a 12-year-old girl, especially seeing she didn't know what this was. As Pippa stood at the front, or what she thought might be the front of this thing, Pippa stretched out her hand and touched it. Now her hand seemed to disappear into the creature a little, but Pippa found it very soft and not at all dangerous. The creature responded to Pippa's touch and seemed to be soothed by her gentle touch, and made a little what seemed like a purring sound. Pippa spoke gently to the creature. She said, There, what's wrong? Are you hurt? What type of animal are you?" All the while stroking the side of the creature. Pippa was shocked and moved away quickly when the creature spoke to her. "How did you do that?" Pippa asked. "Through your touch," the creature responded. "You don't have a mouth, but I can hear you. Your voice is in my head. How can that be?" Pippa exclaims. "That's right, my dear," the creature says. "My name is Maya, and I am a Mookie." A trembling Pippa responded, "Well, it's nice to meet you, Maya. You're not going to eat me, are you?" "No, my dear," said Maya. "Oh, my name is Pippa. How did you get here?" Maya then set about to explain that Mookies were an entity and travelled the stars in groups, visiting planets like Earth to feed and replenish themselves. "It's the water," Maya goes on to explain, "that they live on. Water, and travel through the clouds of rain to get their food ready for the next journey." Pippa interrupts. "So there are more planets like ours?" "Oh yes," Maya says, "but yours is by far the loveliest. Some of us even settle here and become part of your world." "But why are you here on the ground?" Pippa asks. "Well," Maya starts, "I had a little accident and ran into the mountain, and because my energy levels are so low, I can't fly. So I was trying to get some help from the others." Maya goes on to explain how she crashed into the mountain. You see, she was having so much fun flying through the clouds and getting stronger and stronger with every flight, she didn't notice the mountain. and in some ways it was like playing, and the Mookies sometimes get so excited they forget what they are doing. Pippa interrupts. Yes, Mum says that about me all the time. Yes, it's good to have fun, says Maya, but Pippa wants to know more about the Mookies. So Maya continues her story, and as she does, the fog changes to a very light rain, and Maya's energy levels start to rise. Maya scans the clouds for other Mookies, but couldn't find any. They've moved on, Maya states. I'll stay, I think, because it's not nice in space on your own, but I'll need to get moving. You see, in this form, I wouldn't last long in the sunlight. Pippa, so where will you go? To the sea, Maya states. As she starts to move off, Pippa says, please stay. I can't, replies Maya, as she heads off towards the ocean. What will you become then? Pippa calls. I will see you again, my little friend, and thank you for your help, replies Maya. How did I help? Thought Pippa. Maya responds, it was your touch and your kindness that kept me going until it rained. Pippa had a warm, fuzzy feeling inside and knew that someday she would see Maya again. As Maya disappeared into the rain cloud, Pippa headed back to the house to tell everyone about her friend. She was so excited, and as she told her mum and dad all about Mookies and Maya, and that Mookies were space travellers, with some of them living in our oceans, Pippa's mum turned to Pippa's dad and said, what an imagination our daughter has. Pippa responds, well, don't believe me then, and stormed off to her room. Some years later, Pippa had now finished school and moved into working on a marine research ship, with Maya and the Mookies now a distant memory, till one day Pippa and some of the crew were taking samples of water using a rubber dinghy away from the main ship, when a large humpback whale surfaces right beside the rubber dinghy. The whale moves ever so gently up to the little rubber boat until it is almost touching. The whale turns slightly and looks Pippa in the eye. Pippa is so overwhelmed by the encounter, she reaches out and touches the whale, and instantly recalls her encounter with Maya and the Mookie. And with a surprised sound in her voice, Pippa says, Maya, is that you? The whale seemed to respond and starts to make whale song, which totally amazed the researchers. Pippa, now completely overwhelmed, said, it is you. You are a big, beautiful whale. And at that, the whale nudged the small boat gently, and ever so gently moves off so as not to overturn the little boat. Pippa strokes her side, and then Maya was gone. The rest of the research team could not believe what they had just happened. So Pippa told them of her encounter with the Mookie when she was a 12-year-old girl, and she believed that the whale was Maya, her Mookie friend, and become a whale instead of swimming the oceans of the universe. She now swam the oceans of Earth. At hearing Pippa's story, the rest of the research team agrees with Pippa's mum and dad and believes she has a good imagination, but couldn't explain what had just happened. Over the years that followed, Pippa and Maya's paths crossed several times, and each time was just as exciting as the last. Well, that's the end of the story from the storyteller today. We'll see you next week.